Alright, welcome back to Theory and Theology. Welcome back to the podcast. On this podcast, we talk about spirituality, religion, cultures, different types of lifestyles, people around the world. So fall season tends to have a lot of themes across cultures. One of those themes that you see very often is that theme of harvesting. Excuse me, I'm sneezing. Today, October 10th of 2022, it is the first day of Sukkot, a Jewish holiday. Some Christians celebrate it. Messianic Jews, Jews for Jesus, a lot of different groups kind of celebrate it or have something surrounding this period of time with the lunar calendar. So I'm going to talk about Sukkot briefly. I'm not going to read a whole lot of Bible, but just specifically for those interested in Sukkot in the Old Testament, you can find information in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verse 33. That goes on through verse pretty much to the end of that chapter, pretty much through verse 44, and also in the Old Testament, in the book of Numbers. I'm afraid to close my pages, I have bookmarks. So in the book of Numbers, there's a lot more information about all these like sacrifices and things. Numbers chapter 29, verses 12 through 12 through pretty much 39. And then for people who read the New Testament, these aren't I mean, a lot of the passages I'm talking about here, it's not limited to these. I'm just only really talking about these right now because there's a lot of other stuff and I don't really want to read that much more. But I'll say, so in the book of John, chapter 7, verses 10 through pretty much 24. So maybe John chapter 7, verses verses 1 John chapter 7 verses pretty much 1 through 24. There's kind of like a beginning of the story before verse 10. So so I'm not going to talk in way too much detail about all those. If people want to read it, I mean, you can get plenty of free Bible stuff online and read it all on your own, or even do like audio recordings or whatever. I'm not going to read all of it because it's a whole lot to read, and you know, with what I've gone through with reading it and refreshing on it, I of course, always come up with a lot of interesting questions that come to mind. So, just some background. So, Sukkot, day one of Sukkot is today. It began at sundown October 9th, and the first day ends sundown October 10th of 2022. So this is officially part of the 7th month of the lunar Jewish calendar. The month is called Tishrei, and Sukkot starts on the 15th day. This year is considered 5,783. So if you want to compare all those types of pieces of information, go ahead. So basically, Sukkot or Sukkah is a type of a booth. Some people say tabernacles. Some people say dwelling. Either way, it's kind of like a temporary dwelling. It's not a permanent, like, fixture of a house with a foundation. It's something you kind of put up, use it temporarily, take it down, leave, maybe carry it with you, or gather belongings to make a new one when you settle in the next spot. So during this festival, there is the gathering of the harvest on the first day, which is in the 7th month of Tishrei on the 15th day. That's when all the crops are harvested. So it's harvesting day basically. And people commemorate this festival of an 8-day festival by dwelling in these in a sukkah. And so some people say that this festival is representative of God's protection when the Israelites left Egypt. Some people say because they were pitching these kind of booths or dwellings that they lived in the wilderness after they left from Egypt. Some people say it was the protection of the pillar of cloud that followed them and shaded them while they were wandering in the hot desert heat for 40 years. I don't know if the pillar of cloud was there for 40 years, but I know it says years. I don't know how many years. I don't know if it was like the entire time or what. And so basically, sundown of October 9th of 2022 through sundown October 10 of 2022, there's no work permitted. As far as the commandments of the festival are concerned, the question that I was kind of a little maybe confused on, that I didn't read into a lot yet, was I guess two things. So I'm very familiar with the holy days that say no work, or the Sabbaths, or the days that are considered convocations or appointments where it says don't work. But if it's also a day of harvesting and gathering of all of your crops that are ready to be harvested, as well as the significant amount of sacrifices that are required during this whole entire 8-day period, including this first day, like I was looking at this chart that I'll get to, but I was looking at this chart that showed, different I guess it was like the musaf, and the offerings, and it was so many. Like, I was like, that's what popped out at me, was like how many things are getting sacrificed just on one of the days. The 8th day goes into the day of rest again. So people start working on the 2nd day, and then they work all the way up until that night of the 7th night into what would be the 8th day. That starts the 8th day, the night of the 7th. And then we come up on what's called Simchat Torah, so rejoicing in the Torah. And the Torah portions get completed, and basically the Parsha readings shortly thereafter begin again on October 22nd of 2022. So you start over again at the Parsha called Bereshis, which is the beginning, Genesis 1:1, and then go all the way through to the end of Deuteronomy, pretty much. And so this is a lot. It's a lot of information. It's always a lot of information. So with the chart that says the Musaf offerings, it shows all the types of offerings for what type of day. And Sabbath day, Rosh Chodesh, which is like the start of the month, Pesach, each of the days of Pesach, which is Passover and Shavuot. So we just passed Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was sunset Sunday, September 25th, which was the first of Tishrei. And it ended on Tuesday, September 27th of 2022 at nightfall, which was the 2nd of Tishrei. And then Yom Kippur came after that. And now we're in Sukkot. So Sukkot it has offerings for day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then Shemini Atzeres, which is that 8th day. The offerings are there's different amounts of offerings pretty much every day. It looks like the first day has the most amount of offerings. So basically it starts with day 1 going through day 7 and then the 8th day. So day 1 for the bulls, it's 13, then the next day 12, then 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. That's through the 7th day. And then then the 8th day would be 1 bull. For the rams, it's 2 on every day, except for on the 8th day, it would be 1 ram. For the lambs, it's 14 every day, and then on the 8th day, it would be 7, and then every single day, there's 1 goat offering. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm guessing that these numbers are so high compared to all the other types of holy days. These numbers are so high because the all the harvest was just made on this day. But I mean, I'm not like trying to judge things or make it more confusing than it already needs to be, but I learned a little bit about gematria and a little bit from one of my Bible-based friends back in high school, early college days, about the significance of numbers. A lot of people know the number 13 isn't considered necessarily a good one. The number 6 isn't really considered a good one. The number 7 is considered holy. And then the number 8 is one more than holy. So 6 is one less than holy. And then, so you see that, I don't know if there's any significance with these numbers of the first day, starting with the bull offering of 13, going all the way down to the 7th day, having the number 7 of the bull offering. And I really don't know. And then you see with the lambs, the offerings are 14 every day. I mean, 14 is seen as one of those important numbers, as well as is the number 40, the number 70, those numbers that you see coming up. So basically, for the Olah, or the elevation offering, that's what the bulls, rams, and lambs are. And for the chatas, which is the sin offering, that's what the goat is. So there's always less of the goat offerings. The most amount of offerings are the lambs. Rams are in the middle, and then the bull offerings decrease from 13 to 7, and then on the 8th day, 1. I don't know. I'm kind of speculating, but I really don't know. That's something that would be for me to look into further, but I don't want to do it right now. But it's something kind of on my mind of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, it kind of catches my attention as one of the first things to catch my attention. And then, let's see. I lost my place, sorry. So I'll just read what it says for the first offering. It's just so much information. So it says on the 15th day of the 7th month, I'm just looking at the offerings. So in Numbers 29:13, it says, "You shall offer an elevation offering, a fire offering, a satisfying aroma to Hashem, 13 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs in their first year. They shall be unblemished, and their meal offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 ephah for each bull of the 13 bulls, 2/10 ephah for each ram of the 2 rams, and 1/10 ephah for each lamb of the 14 lambs, and 1 male of the goats for a sin offering, aside from the continual elevation offering with its meal offering and its libation." Let me just stop, because I'm not very familiar with all this kind of offering stuff. Like, you would think, the amount that I was kind of raised around the Bible, that I would understand the offerings and sacrificing and all that kind of stuff more. We were always just told, it was just something like, oh, the temple doesn't exist anymore. We're not in Jerusalem. We don't sacrifice anymore. I'm not saying that I want to. I mean, I don't raise animals or anything, so I don't know how I would even do this even if I wanted to. I mean, I don't know how many animals you're going through during this, like, 8-day period. And this is just one of the festivals. Like, there are other holidays that happen where there's other sacrifices happening and all this kind of stuff. So I'm curious, what do people do now? I mean, I know that people still use the citron fruit and the lulav, but I'm not sure what else actually happens as far as like what the Bible says in it. It's just a lot of stuff that seems to just not happen anymore. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like, I think it's very interesting because we live in a lot of us live in such a different society in the Western world where we're not like growing crops and we're not raising, livestock and animals and herds. We're not shepherds. We're not nomads. We just clock in and out at a job for a business that's somebody else's. But yeah, it's kind of something to be curious on. It's definitely interesting to say the least. And it's a very kind of an interesting kind of festival. Like, I find the story about Jesus to be pretty interesting too. Like, just like a bit of a recap on that. I'm not going to talk about the whole thing in detail, but basically his brothers tell him, it says that they have like their unbelief, and the brothers tell Jesus, why don't you go to Judea, because it's going to be, Sukkot, and, they were in Galilee at this time, and, Jesus was like, no, I'll stay behind, and the brothers are kind of like, anyone who wants to be known or wants what they're doing to be known won't do these kind of miraculous works in secret. And so the brothers go ahead. Jesus says he's not going to go. He says he's going to stay in Galilee. And then Jesus ends up going. He ends up, it says in secret. I don't know what that means. But the crowds were kind of depending on him to be there. And they were, waiting for him to see if he was going to do miracles and things like that. And he teaches in the synagogue. And people are impressed because they're like, he was never taught. Like, how did he know all this stuff? And Jesus is like, this teaching is not my own. And he's basically trying to say, like, he's not trying to seek his own glory, and goes into, the speech about the law of Moses and the commandment about circumcision, and he was saying that, like, the crowd was going to try to kill him, and the crowd was like, we're not trying to kill you, like, what are you talking about? And he basically explained that, according to the law of Moses, and the commandments about circumcision, that, they'll allow a male to get circumcised on the Sabbath, but Jesus mentioned that he healed a man's whole body on the Sabbath, and he was saying that people were angry with him because he was considered to be breaking the law and being judged for that. And so I don't know. I get a little bit on the confused end when it comes to a lot of the topics that Jesus brings up. It feels almost random that he's kind of just like randomly talking about Moses and circumcision and all this kind of stuff. And it says that when he was doing this teaching, it was about the middle of the festival. So it wasn't the first day and it wasn't the last day. So it was one of the days in between. But I do know that when a person is circumcised, they do the circumcision on the 8th day after birth of a male. And so I'm not sure if there's any corresponding, 8 days of the circumcision, him talking about circumcision, and the 7, and then that 8th day of Sukkot. I don't really know at all. There was a passage that I read kind of briefly about it was kind of like the commentary about the citron and the lulav, saying that like traditionally the citron is kind of like representative of a person's heart and works and good deeds, and then the lulav can be representative of like the eyes, the mouth, like other types of like senses, and like the body, and with lack of works, and you kind of need the combination of the body and the spirit, and that's kind of what's representative of these of the citron and the lulav, the branches that you see people holding, those 4 different types bundled up together. And I remember Heshi Freed from Satire mentioning that that with the lulav branches, it's like you kind of like shake them in a way where it's like the fronds are falling off of the branches, and then it represents like shaking off the sins. And I feel like a lot of times when I read this stuff, it's just like there's just like a missing link. It's like there's all these like bits and pieces of stuff, and it's like, what is this even connected to anything relevant? Like I fast forward to like today's day and age, and like I mentioned before about like this time period of harvesting and festivals, like definitely when people think October, they think pumpkins and the leaves changing colors, and we're officially in the fall season. There's all types of holidays and festivals all over the world from all over different cultures. Thanksgiving is kind of relevant. Halloween is kind of relevant. And all these kind of traditions of all these cultures kind of come together in like October, November, December. It's really a high time of year where it's like just before winter, but you're still getting daylight, but the days are shorter. I think today's sunset is 6:25 p.m. I feel like it wasn't that long ago where, the sun was going down at like 8:30 p.m. or 8 something p.m. And now it's already like, I eat dinner and it's night, It's like, there's not a lot of daylight anymore. And, yeah, pretty much if you were really harvesting things, if you really were having crops, this would be the time of the year where you'd have to basically get through the winter, the upcoming winter. It would kind of show, how like ready you would be. Like, are you gonna have to scrimp and portion, or are you gonna have an abundance? And there's all these types of days around this time of year where it's very interesting to kind of look into the history of everything, because it's not just Jewish holidays. It's not just there aren't really October Christian holidays like that too much. Easter isn't really Halloween isn't really considered a Christian holiday. Most Christians kind of don't really teach to practice it. It's usually seen as more demonic and satanic. I don't know if I should even say this, but I wonder why. Because it is another type of pagan festival, but a lot of the other pagan festivals were acknowledged as Christian days. So I wonder why Halloween was completely left out and seen as not good enough. And I also wonder why, if this is an 8-day holiday of Sukkot, there's not an equivalent Christian holiday of Sukkot either. Neither is there one equivalent of Yom Kippur that just passed, the Day of Atonement, nor Rosh Hashanah, which is the Lunar New Year. So it's just a little confusing. But I mean, the Jewish calendar goes by the moon, and the pagan calendar and Christian calendars go by the sun. And so I don't really know. It's just kind of a curious time of year for me where I'm just like, what is going on? Definitely the weather changes. This morning I turned on the heater for a few minutes because it was like 72 indoors. I've had my air on fan, but I feel kind of like I wanted to turn it off because it's kind of a lot of air. It feels a little too chilly. And yeah, I'm just a little curious about certain things like this. Like it's not the most clear season for me. I've just got a lot of curiosities about things that, I've kind of learned that the people who might have the answers to these questions aren't really willing to answer them. So I never really ask my theology major friends, my pastor friends. I never ask them because they never answer, because I don't know. I mean, I guess they study, but maybe they're taught to just not answer. But I never was able to get answers about this kind of stuff. So I kind of study little by little on my own. That's about as far as I got today. I haven't read every single thing, but I am curious about the things I just mentioned being curious on. and I'm wondering to see if there's going to be more that kind of pops out in this next 8-day festival period. I'm not sure yet if I'm gonna kind of backtrack and record about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I'm not sure. I might not. I'm just not sure yet. But I don't know if this is funny or not. I can always find a weird reason to laugh at things, but in Adventist culture, October 22nd of the year 1844 was considered the Great Disappointment, because people during that time thought that, Jesus was coming because of some calculations that were done by some types of scholars or theologians or whoever it was doing the calculations, and they found some kind of significant date of October 22nd, 1844. They considered it the Great Disappointment because people were waiting for Jesus to come. They had sold a lot of their possessions or all of their possessions, and Adventism sprung itself out of that movement, and surprisingly, this what's it called? This reading cycle of the new Torah portions is going to be, beginning the cycle again at the start of Genesis on October 22nd of 2022. Interesting stuff. But I don't really have too much more to say. That's kind of as far as I got for today. Check out the recording about the movie Ushpizin. See what you think about it. If you want to watch the movie, probably watch the movie first, because I totally spoiled the whole movie by explaining the entire movie in that episode. But there's like trailers on YouTube and stuff, or you can buy it on YouTube or buy it on Amazon Prime or rent it on either one, I think. But yeah, with that, thanks for listening.